So welcome to another special edition author interview. I'm your host, Michael Whitehouse, the guy who knows a guy. And today's guest is Stan, let's see if I can pronounce your last name right, Kasprzyk?
Perfect.
All right, let's hear you pronounce it.
Kasprzyk.
Nice, Stan Kasprzyk. And you're the author of Suspended in Vast Plain.
Yeah, lots of consonants in my last name.
Yes. Yeah, so, and it's a Polish name?
Yes, Polish name.
Where you're from. We'll get to your story in a moment, but tell us briefly about the book we're going to be talking about.
Well, the book looks like this. It's 230 or 40 pages. It has an important piece of the story. One of the themes or symbols, the baobab tree. There is a different story about who took this picture, whether it was my wife or myself.
So first, where was that picture taken?
This is in Yola in Africa, in the northeastern corner of Nigeria.
Okay.
In West Africa.
All right. And so what's the book about?
It's the book has two parts. There's a canvas, which is Africa, a new university, brand new. The first years is of teaching there, and it's all those difficulties, problems of life, the so-called white man's grave of West Africa, and malaria, snakes, and so on. Harmattan. Well, if you want to know what harmattan is, look up on Google. And it is two-year period, and this is the canvas of the story. The main point, main thread or premise is how I handle this and how I left Poland, which was in the distress at that time, politically, economically. Economically, it looked more or less like Sri Lanka today, with shortages of many products, including gas, food, some food products, and also politically. It was the time of Cold War. Poland was behind the Iron Curtain, isolated and controlled by the Soviet superpower. And the Cold War was dangerous. We as well. I mean, there were missiles installed on both sides of the Iron Curtain. President Reagan was on one side, and different general secretaries on the other. So it is a part of this is on my mind at the time, and also the internal strife in Poland. So I escaped that. I was disillusioned with the promise of socialism or communist rule, and I wanted to find some sense for myself and my family. And I went to I got a contract at the university, and this story talks about how I, in the flashbacks, sets the background for all my thinking and my feelings. And the other thing was that I wasn't sure about about the future, basically, to emigrate or not, or what are my options in the world. Can I teach in Australia maybe later on if Africa is not pleasant enough? And I finally decided on one of the solutions, and it seemed at the beginning to be a very difficult decision to take, to break completely with the base, with Poland, with my friends, families, and all the good things of your youth, right?
Okay, and so when did you write the book? Were you still in Africa then, or?
No, this was in in Cold War.
Oh yeah, right. That was about 40 years ago. So
yeah,
and so you're not in Africa anymore now.
No, I'm in Canada.
Okay.
to make a spoiler how it ended up everything. Well, and the book is, yes, it takes place right up front. I specify the date. The first chapter is 5th of October 1983. This is a day when I arrived to Africa, first time in my life, my first time I flew on an airplane. All these emotions and seeing the new place, reaction to this, and the book was written as I worked as a software developer in both US and Canada, and I retired. And there was an anecdote, if I may say. Margaret Atwood tells this anecdote, the famous Canadian author of many important novels. Margaret Atwood goes to a cocktail party, and there is a neurosurgeon there, and he comes to her and says, "Oh, you're right. Oh, that's interesting, because when I retire, I'm going to be a writer." So Margaret Atwood fires back, "Oh, that's interesting coincidence, because when I retire from writing, I will become a neurosurgeon." So I heard that beforehand, before beginning writing. That's a good thing, right? So I realized that it's a profession change of a profession, definitely. Writing is a serious job, and there are two things. Probably there was a soil. I was thinking about writing in my 50s, or maybe even earlier, but I couldn't imagine how I can do that. And then the trigger was, and I described the situation in the preface to the book, that we had a retirement lunch, a send-off, a job, and then my biography came up in some stories, in some emails, and there was an interest in one corner of the room in the restaurant, and some friends were interested about my story of Africa, how I survived, how I deal. So I found, oh, okay, maybe that's an interesting topic to talk about. And they said, oh, maybe you will write something about this. And this is how how this was the grain, the seed that went to the soil. And then I went to courses, and they were named creative writing, memoir, exactly what I wanted. Creative writing was kind of magic, but I started to learn the craft in many ways. So creative writing, if I may say about this a little, in my experience, is because all the day writing of memoirs was kind of dry, on facts mostly, and then in I don't know exactly 70s, 80s, 90s in North America and probably around the world, people started writing more and more, but how to make the readers get excited about this. So then creative writing comes in, and as one of my recent exchanges, I heard that, okay, memoir has to be half true and half interesting.
Half true and half interesting.
Very, very good characterization. So creative writing makes all stories interesting. It has to be a story. It has to have an arc. It has the tension has to grow. Then there is a resolution, and then the ending, some conclusion. There have to be hooks, uncertainties, unexpected moves, characters have to have the arc, and etc., etc. And show, don't tell rule is so important. Don't show, don't tell. In other words, build the scenes when you present your story. It has to be, this way the reader gets into your story easier, reacts emotionally. And one of the element of showing, not telling, is dialogue. And when you have a memoir, when you write a memoir, all those details that what happened and who acted, who are still in your head, even 35 years later. But dialogue, it's hard to recreate how it ran. But you can have a pieces of it, right? And from these pieces you create. So this is the interesting part. Not necessarily true, but interesting, and keeps reader on the toes, or shivering and happy and ready for more.
Yeah, I love that concept. It has to be half true and half interesting. That's and you're right. It is more engaging to read dialogue, even if it's not word for word was actually said 30, 40 years ago when it happened. It still gives people a better sense of what's going on than just you saying this happened, then this happened, this happened, this happened. So you definitely need to get be engagement that way. So what part of your life does memoir cover? It covers all the way back into Poland and then through Africa, or?
No, it's just 2 years in Africa.
Okay.
The title, Suspended in the Vast Plain. Vast Plain is a kind of symbolic geographic location,
right,
in Africa. And suspended is that I was not sure what to do completely. I had an inclination. I didn't want to return to the malaise of Polish life, but at that time nobody knew how this whole confrontation will end. So I was looking for solutions, and I was all concerned. I was not sure if I can stomach emigration, basically leaving Poland. So this is just 2 years. In a memoir writing classes, they will tell you, okay, this is your life. Draw your life on a sheet of paper. You were born there. And then I saw that in the middle of that, of my life, is Africa. Is the 2 years in Africa between Poland and later years. And obviously I was aiming at this. I think I had a structure right from the beginning. Well, maybe not 100% totally, but I knew how my character, the protagonist, meaning Stan Kasprzyk, how he developed through the time, how he coped and developed and came to some conclusions gradually based on the events and conversations, and that's basically the whole concept of the book.
Okay. And so tell me a little bit about what you discovered in Africa that was unexpected, or that might surprise a Western audience.
Well, one thing at the beginning, I was different when I came to Africa than the Western audience. I was brought up in the communist regime country. So my views were kind of isolated, limited. The other thing is that at that time, it was a different time. 35 years ago. Many things were different. Communication, basically, we couldn't do this conversation.
No Zoom in the 80s.
No Zoom, no cell phones, all sorts of, completely different world. But from the so-called socialist perspective, I found really shocking the differences between the rich and the poor, if you will. It was, on the other hand, it was real. It was a feudal society in a sense, and it still is, I think, because the Nigerians keep the traditional rulers for obvious reasons as an important factor of the social fabric. So the emir of Katsina, let's say, feudal ruler, was a chancellor of university. And so on, and they are paid by the rulers are paid on the government. They are on the government salaries, and they have they meet with the local people. There are parades on some holidays. This is, by the way, Islamic country where I went. The northern part of Nigeria, excuse me, is Islamic. It's dominated by Islam. But the south is one part is Protestant Christianity and the other one is Catholic Christianity. But on the other hand, they are the other shocking and for everybody, that Africa, especially at least I can talk about Nigeria, is such a mix of tribes and languages. Imagine in Yola, if you are on the bottom, if you are just a young kid, you obviously start speaking your local language. But in the neighborhood, there are other tribes, they speak a different language. So there might be simple languages. I'm not a linguist, I cannot judge. But so you just begin to talk. You become bilingual. But if you go to school, to town, you have to learn, well, let's simplify. You have to learn Hausa, which is a language of the dominant tribe in northern Nigeria. Right? So you are trilingual. But if you go to university or you prepare for the university, you have to learn the official language of the country, which is English. And for me, it was really hard to believe how they can handle. How I mean, I was slowly learning, getting more grasp on English, but so become bilingual. But those kids were talking, and at the same time, they were people coming from another part of the country, let's say tradesmen, taxi drivers, mechanics from the south, and they speak other language than Hausa, for instance, and some Yoruba or Igbo language. So that was really exciting to see. Well, the problem I faced was that Nigeria was going down. Nigeria is dependent on the oil exports.
Okay.
And it's been since the beginning of OPEC, a member of OPEC, and at that time in 1983, the prices and demands for oil was going down. It was 3 years after the second shock in the world, in the rich world, when the prices of gas went through the roof. So gradually Nigeria was losing, as well as the Soviet Union, by the way. So I was watching, I was kind of playing the Well, I was playing against the Soviet Union, to tell you.
So you were not rooting for your home team at that point.
Well, it depends. There were two home teams, to tell you the truth. And that's another part I try to picture, because the society was divided. I mean, there were members of the ruling elite and the ruling secret service that controlled the society. It was a time when everybody heard about Lech Walesa and Solidarity movement, so it was crushed. I left Poland 15 months after the crash of by General Jaruzelski. So the society was, halved. One was on the one side supporting, or getting some benefits from the regime, and the other side was obviously opposed. I mean, we always thought that the other side was much bigger, and we waited, for the Soviet Union to weaken at least.
And so this was what, 4 or 5 years before
Well,
Berlin Wall and.
Well, no, it was more than that.
Okay.
Yeah, I left in 80. I left Nigeria in September 85. It was the time when Gorbachev was at the Kremlin.
Okay. Yeah.
But it was slowly, moving. There were the meetings with, President Reagan and Gorbachev, and the solution, the resolution of the Polish drama conflict was in June 1989.
Okay.
And the Soviet Union collapsed, was dissolved in December 1991. So,
yeah.
It's still a long way.
Yeah. And so you were with the US by that time when?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was in Toronto.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what was it like to watch that? Because as I've read about it, it seems like it was somewhat unexpected by a lot of people. Like, it was clear communism wasn't a sustainable system, but it seemed like it was going to hold on and dig its heels in for another few decades, and then all of a sudden, whoop, all of a sudden you got Yeltsin riding a tank, you had walls coming down. And yes. So what was that like from your perspective, having lived through it and then watching it in the news a few years later?
Well, this is outside of the memoir.
Okay.
Of this memoir, at least. Well, I watched, I listened to BBC, mostly on the radio, and going to work. I remember that vividly. I was very busy, to settle down, to get material problems in the family resolved. So I was early in the morning at 8 a.m. There was BBC News on the radio. I listened in the car going to my job, and I was following. It was starting. This process began in '88, so it was like 3 years after I came here, or maybe less than 3 years, and with every word was so important, and I tried to understand whether measure the chances and which way it will go. And obviously Gorbachev was some sort of hope. The important part of the story, actually, if I may add now, it was my father, who was always interested in politics. He used to listen to Polish broadcasts on the Western stations like Free Europe, Voice of America, BBC, and so on. So he was always following the rules and trying to determine which way the things might go. And I wrote letters, or sometimes talk on the phone. The phone conversations were very expensive at that time for me. So in the letters, we just looked at the chances, and it turned to be. And my father, well, you know, I was not sure if I would ever see him, you know, after emigrating, but luckily he came and I saw him in Toronto.
Right. And so the book is about your 2 year, or the 2 of the years that you were in Nigeria. And so to say it's kind of about your journey to figure out what you were doing next, you know, as you were suspended in vast plain, to figure out what the next move would be ultimately to the United States.
That's right. That's exactly what I intended to tell the reader.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the things that a reader will take away from this book? How will they find themselves educated and transformed having read your book?
Well, it's in many ways, I hope. One way for the youngsters is that when you are in the beginning of your journey, hopefully you will end up in a good place, but the journey is long, and you have to be patient and persistent, and you shouldn't envy. You should take everything with a grain of salt, or you know, some irony and understanding and of yourself, right? Of your build, of your philosophy of life, or you can build actually a philosophy of your life, but you're still at the, you know, I was the youngest among the professors there. I was financially at the bottom in this group.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just managed. I was financially smart at some point. So you have to be persistent and also intelligent and smart in this way. And I think this was also my intention when I wrote the preface for the older readers. Look, folks, you can always go back to your stories, important moments in your life, right? That that you made the decisions, turns, and look with positivity. I mean, they brought you there to the point that you're in right now, and you know, you can benefit from that. So write a memoir, learn how to do it, maybe publish, but at least leave something for your grandkids and great grandkids.
Yeah, those are some powerful messages for both audiences. And yeah, I totally see what you're saying. I remember when I was younger, I know when I talk to other younger people, that they're impatient, they want it now, the time is running out. Oh, I'm gonna be 30, you know, and we look back on that and we're like, 30. Yeah, yes. You'll be a child of 30, and they'll be like, oh, I'm 30, my life is over, I haven't done anything yet, time's running. So yeah, this is a powerful message to give that kind of perspective. And also I love that you're talking about the juxtaposition of the kind of feudal culture in Nigeria, the communist culture, and behind the Iron Curtain, capitalism in the US. Seems like, you know, really powerful set of references to your audience.
Yeah, just one thing. I also wrote a few chapters on my contacts with the Westerners.
Okay.
With Danes. They built breweries, of course, right? The Danes are famous. There were two couples, Jewish couples. There were Egyptians, Indians, Americans as well. My boss for some time was an American professor from NYU.
Okay.
And I learned, you know, that those people are free of lies. They are open, right? They are genuine. You know, there's nothing much behind. Obviously, there are some, you know, nice behavior but you know, I had a very good impression. Also, Nigerians educated in the US, very important. So it gave me some belief, some, you know, strong belief that I will fit in.
And is that part of what made you interested in coming west, that meeting people who had not grown up in communism and been able to express themselves freely and didn't watch what they said.
Exactly, Michael.
Yeah, I can see it being very powerful. And so was it meeting these people that made you say, I want to go where they came from?
Well, yes. We listened to Tina Turner
Uh-huh.
and ABBA and all this good stuff, and we had Italian food, Italian lasagna. There was one Scot who was really opposed to Margaret Thatcher at that time, and I didn't like his views too much. But that's a political little message here.
Yeah, but so it's about being exposed to all that. You realize that there's something going on over there.
Yes, and I want to be there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. There's definitely, one of the most powerful forms of propaganda that the West had was just sharing messages. I remember reading about people in the Soviet Union saying, where'd they find so many cars to stage a scene like that to make it look like everyone has cars? And they're like, we didn't stage it. That's just a city. Americans have problems like traffic. They're like, traffic? Too many cars? What's that even like?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's what I think is fascinating too is by having that African stopover in your story. A story we hear a lot is people who came from communism, went to capitalism, saw the difference, and we sort of see it as a bipolar world. There's a communist world, a capitalist world, and that's it. That's the worlds, two different worlds, communist, capitalist. And it sounds fascinating exploring this semi-feudal, semi-capitalist, semi-traditional Nigerian culture.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
Yeah, and what were you talked about this a little bit, but what were some of the most striking things in the cultural context besides the languages and everything else? Things that would really surprise people in a Western audience reading this.
Well, actually, when I think back, we lived, as I said, in an Islamic environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we lived close to a mosque, and there was morning calls, and there were, Friday the square was filled with men, but I felt it wasn't so intrusive. I thought that African or North Nigerian, at least, Islam is different from Arabic. That was my feeling, and I felt sympathy to the whole culture, and I even considered that some years back Islam was definitely for those societies which had some ancient beliefs, let's say, they just Islam was progressive. Islam was organizing their life. Organized religion is good for building society. So it brought the coherence to those multi-tribes, unorganized lives. The big danger, they were going through civil changes, of course, and one of the factors were in this part, I mean, north, especially Yola, in this corner of Nigeria was, it was away from old colonial good places to live, and some industrial development, and like I'm talking about Jos, Kaduna, Kano, all those towns. It was quiet, rather. However, at some point there was a bloody riot, a jihadist riot, and it actually, it was called. They call them themselves Maitatsine movement. Some people claim that it's predecessor of the Boko Haram of today, the ISIS movement, which is even bloodier now. But we were in the middle of the killing of more than 1,000 people there, and quarter of the town destroyed because military had to came and bomb them to crush the fighting, the killing. But it was otherwise it was quiet. There was no robberies. There was and I think this was the least developed part of Nigeria, and it gave us a little bit of a feeling of safety, but we suffer a little bit. Even I read a novel recently by African author. I tried to find all tropes of the stories there, and one character is sent to work in a bank in Yola, and it was kind of considered to be the from Lagos, from the developed part, as a kind of an end of the Nigerian world. So it was additionally difficult for me.
Yeah, that sounds like an incredible story. And so it's been fascinating to talk to you. I love hearing your story, and the book sounds great. And of course, people can find that on the Writers Republic site. So writersrepublic.com/bookshop/suspended-bass-plane, which of course that's going to be in the show notes wherever they're watching or listening to this. Or people can go to writersrepublic.com and just type in "suspended in bass plane" into the search box, and that'll bring it up as well. Is there any final thoughts or comments you would like to share with the audience?
Well, I also have my website.
Okay, yes. What's the website?
It's my name, although difficult to pronounce, but StanKasprzyk.com. Right. So
that link will be in the notes as well.
Yes, Stan Kasprzyk. This is right. This is my name. So StanKasprzyk.com.
Very good.
And I also started a blog on that website, and I posted one entry there and had a little bit of discussion with one person at least.
Excellent.
So if you are interested, if anybody is interested in writing, in memoir, in my experience of writing, or anything related to Africa, whatever I know, or Cold War, please, or about what is in the story. Maybe there is some misunderstanding. What was the intention of this particular character?
Absolutely. And that's the great thing with writers is you can still you can talk to them. You can read the book and then engage with the writers, and I suspect you're open to talking about those stories.
I am, definitely.
Fantastic. And then people can contact you through the website, of course.
Yes.
All right. Well, this has been great. It's been great to have you on the show. All those links are in the show notes wherever someone is watching this. And thank you so much for sharing your story, both on the show and in the book.
Michael, thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.